Hi, Sandy.
Amy, good morning.
How are you today?
Good. I wore my pink for Barbie today. It's not hot pink, but it's pink.
Oh, nice. Nice. I like you in pink. That looks good. I did not wear pink. I didn't even think about that. So today we're talking about things that are out of the box and things that possibly inspire us. And Barbie came to mind, of breaking the rules and not following life script. And the Barbie movie, anyway, kind of came to mind. And one of the reasons it came to mind was because of that rant that America Ferrera does.
Which
What
was,
did you think? Yeah, what did you think when you heard it?
I loved it. And I never went back. You know, you make mental notes when you're watching a movie about things that you either want to research or look back on. I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to go back and, read it and think about it a little bit more. But there were so many truths to it. In the writing, and I don't know, all the things about being authentic, how tough things are, how tough we are on ourselves. And yeah.
Right. And being how hard it is. The next to last sentence was very interesting because what she does, she goes through, you have to be thin, but you have to not be too thin. You're supposed to love being a mother, um, but don't talk about your kids all the time. You have to be a career woman, but always be looking out for other people. So it's like this tug of war.
Mhm.
And the next last sentence is, I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself in knots so that people will like us.
So,
That's the piece that really got me. It was like, yeah,
so since we're talking about Barbie and movies, can I tell you a really strange, I don't know if it's analogy is the right word, but comparison that I thought of when I read, especially like that sentence or even all of this.
mhm,
So back when royalty, back when Harry's book came out, that was about the same time of the docu-series and how, two different versions of Barbie. We've got the Kate Barbie and we've got the Megan Barbie. And purely whether whoever's camp or whatever Barbie you want, how, you know, both would touch their pregnant stomachs, and one was being too expressive and the other was being perfect. How they each were looked at differently. You talk about your kids too much, you're too this, too that, and at the end of the day, all those things are about making people like you. And for Megan, it was a battle she was never going to win. But it's so
right,
hard too, right? And
right,
and again, back to two ladies and two different versions of Barbie and out in the public eye. And sometimes you just can't win. And that line
right,
about, I'm so tired of watching myself and every other single woman tie herself in knots so people will like us. And I honestly think the Megan persona is more typical because most of us don't go out there and just get accepted for everything we do and all the hard things we do as being a woman. And I think about being in the male world and how many times it was better just to shut up or not bring things up or just to try to blend in, right?
right, right. I
Or
always think of the term uh, where it's not where we get labeled to be of being aggressive instead of um, I'm trying to think of the other word, like where we're standing up for ourselves or we're standing up for our ideas, but instead of being
we're
um,
bossy instead of being good leaders. We're being snarky. We're being
yeah, right,
it's
and aggressive instead of yes, I can't even think of the word.
you're fine. I mean,
So
think about when a girlfriend or relationship goes bad. She's crazy.
yeah,
She's
right,
bossy. She's pushy. That's another one.
right, right. It's very interesting. So part of this, I was looking up like what. the things that inspire us and how trying to tie in this Barbie rant into things that we see that are out of the box. Because I will tell you, the Barbie movie was very out of the box for me. Like it was not what I expected at all. You know, I expected a fluffy movie, and it was a very much addressing um, feminism, really, and what the role of women and how we've been described. And so I started thinking about how we've met people through the years who have inspired us to step out of the box, or recently, or because they're doing it. Have you had any people that have inspired you in some way?
I feel like it all the time. And maybe I'm more open to it because I've moved and so everybody's new to me. And I see a lot of people. I love the phrase you be you. And that's, as long as things are consensual, people are being kind, whatever, however you choose to express yourself is good by me. But I find myself saying that a lot. You be you. It's all good, you be you. But so yeah, I'm trying to think of an example. Do you have an example of someone recently?
I do. So last weekend, just or this yesterday, I just came home from Arkansas, and I was hanging out with some high school friends, which are people that I haven't seen for some of them 30 plus years. And one of them, she she really, I so admired her, and she was a close friend through grade school and high school. But one of the things that she did was she took a step back from her life, and she said, all right, stop, brakes on, I need to reevaluate. And so she gave herself time to reevaluate her whole, everything that was happening. And what she did, she moved to Hot Springs, which is where I'm from, and she signed up for a different job of being a caretaker for someone's relative. And it's giving her the opportunity to reevaluate what she wants going forward. And I thought that was such a brave move to do that. And one of the so I found a so that's one of my examples. Um, one of the things that I found was 6 powerful traits of people who inspire us. And I'll put the links in the link in the show notes. But the very first thing that they put on here was they have immense courage. And it says, people who inspire us to be better are not weak, scared, or stuck. They're bold and have fortitude and courage to push through their fears and take a stand on what they believe. They've done what I call brave up.
Brave up.
Um, I know, isn't that great? These inspires have faced great odds and challenges, and they've turned their mess into a message to help others overcome their challenges. They figured out that if you want to make a difference in the world, you have to address your own demons first. So I love that, because then when I read that, I was like, yeah, everybody that I inspire, they're doing something brave, or what I think is brave.
Right. Right.
So I think of my friend Michelle, and she just put, stop, I need to reevaluate. And I'm like, that is so brave.
Even things like unwinding something that you accepted. I was on a board and there was somebody who just took a step back and they simply said, this is great, but I just don't think I have as much to offer as I thought. And I just think it's better for us to part ways. A lot of times people don't like how that looks to them to unwind something. If it's in a relationship or a commitment, a client relationship, and it might look like it's brave because we all dread it, but once it's done, it's just an easy relief. Because at the end of the day, do you really want somebody who's not all in? And it doesn't have to be a negative, but sometimes stepping away is a sign of bravery, or making a choice to try something new. It always seems like it's so brave because we all look at it and say, oh, that would be hard. And most of the time we do more hand wringing over it. That's more painful than the good feels when we've done it. That's always been my experience has always been when it was the right thing to do. It felt so seamless and right when I authentically shared why, and you pulled the band-aid off. It's like, that wasn't so bad, quitting a job, quitting, I had to let somebody go once. And honestly, I was to the point where I was sick of legalese and HR. You can't do this, because I had been put in a circumstance where all the legalese and the HR, that it just felt icky when I left a situation. And I thought, I'm not doing that to somebody else. We're all real people. And we had a great conversation, and both of us said, this probably isn't the best thing. And he gave me a hug, and the other lady said, what just happened? It didn't feel like it was a firing. I'm like, it wasn't. It was I think we were both brave by being able to say, you know what, there were some mistakes. This isn't a good fit. Move on. But a lot of
Yeah.
people don't want to do things like that. And that was a two-way street, right? But
Right.
it felt good because it was authentic and it was real.
Right. And that's what you said. That doesn't always play out like that, where two people are on the same page, and it's easy to kind of break that commitment to each other.
Right.
And you mentioned commitment in when you were talking, and that's what's one of the notes I put down earlier, is these commitments that we make and how we admire people for breaking those commitments when the expectation is they hang on to those commitments, but breaking them in an adult way, not breaking them in a childish way, a mature way, I would say, is how you want to break your commitments.
It was, and I think the thing with the Barbie movie, it was much deeper, but it also showed how being a female, we come in many different ways, and it's so easy to package and put somebody in the box of saying, this is what Barbie looks like. And most of us went through all the steps of saying, oh my gosh, I forgot about growing up Skipper. Oh, yes, we all had weirdo Barbie that, our brothers cut the hair off, but we went into it with this vision of that one pink stereotypical Barbie. And we went down that road of, here are all the different Barbies out there, and we can connect with all of them. I wrote a blog shortly thereafter, and I'll share it when we're doing the social feeds or in the notes. But people would say to me, well, you don't seem to be a Barbie girl. Because I said, I loved my Barbies. It was my favorite doll. Well, what makes a Barbie girl, right? They were thinking it was going to be the girl dressed in pink with the puppy in her bag, and there was a persona of who made a Barbie girl. Well, I love to tell stories, and I did like Skipper, and I liked the reasons I loved Barbie was multi-dimensional, but it was really an extension of myself, not me trying to be this one Barbie doll, right?
Right.
And I think that's where we become inspiration for others, is when we are happy in our own skin, right? And we learn from the other Barbies out there.
Exactly. And that we're accepting of all the other Barbies out there. It's like you can come in any shape, form, and you can be anything.
And can be enough.
Enough.
I can't tell you how many I have like two of my kids are like, can you give me that sweatshirt? Which, note to self, I'm writing it down right now. They're not listening. They're getting Knuff sweatshirts for.
I know. That's great. I am Knuff.
I am Knuff.
I have another friend who just went on a trip by herself to Germany to go see the Chiefs play football. And again, I was thinking, wow, that is so brave to go do that by yourself. Have you ever done a trip by yourself? Like a big trip?
Not a big trip, not like that. I mean, things like I'm thinking through speaking engagements.
Work
Gosh,
for pleasure is what.
I think only work and nothing. Yeah. I mean, movies. I don't mind doing outings by myself. I don't mind going to events by myself, but I don't think I've ever done a non-work for pleasure trip by myself.
Same. I hadn't either. And when my friend was talking about her trip, I was just so inspired by that. I was like, what? I never even thought to do that, to go on a trip by myself. But if I think of a trip, I'm thinking of who's going to go with me?
How was it for her?
I haven't talked to her. It was just last week.
Okay. Okay, that's
so,
right.
so I haven't,
Okay.
I texted her while she was there and she was having a great time.
Awesome. You
Right.
know, I read the Barbie rant and I wrote a story about how Monday morning meetings. I had a mandatory meeting at 7 a.m. every Monday and how difficult it was, and how being a working mom, being the caretaker, being the breadwinner, and how I would go to these meetings and the guys would all talk about who won their bets, what teams won over the weekend. And literally, I bust my ass to get there, every Monday, but I never spoke up. And at the end of the day, most people got a lot out of it. But as I read this rant, I think, what would Barbie, what would she have done? Um, was I better off not saying anything and conforming? At the end of the day, I did bring it up, but it's back to the two sides. Both sides have to care. And I don't think, I'm rereading her rant here a little bit. I don't think they cared. And I don't mean that bad, but they just thought, hey, if you're going to be a working woman, you got to do what I do. And I don't know. What do you think about that? Is it more conforming, or should I have went and unwound her bounds in her box when whoever's seen the movie back when she almost went in the box and they almost got her back to Barbie land? I mean, do we
Right.
stay in Barbie land or do we break free a little bit?
Good question. I don't know if I can answer that. Like, because I think there's finding a balance and understanding the expectations, because if the expectation, and I'm just thinking of one of the groups I work with, they have evening events. And there's an expectation that the team members go to these evening events.
Mhm.
So, if I were a working mother, that would be a conflict if I had young children, but the expectation was set early on for the people of that team. So, speaking up, I, but if they set the meeting because it was convenient for them and you didn't get to have a voice in setting the meeting, then I would speak up and say, you know what, I would like a voice in this also. And this time is not convenient for me. Can we do this during working hours? And representing yourself and pushing to be respected and have boundaries.
Mhm.
Because I do think, so I know I'm probably talking in circles here. I think it's
We're
important.
talking it out. This is the
I know,
discussion, right?
right. So it's Monday, and I'm like, well, I do think it's healthy to have boundaries and to share those boundaries with people because then they can also feel empowered to share their boundaries. Okay. Because you doing that might enable one of the men in the room to say, oh, you know what? I've been wanting to take my kids to school that day too. So now that would work great for me, but it gives them a little bit of an empowerment of this is one of my boundaries. So anybody else have boundaries?
And in this case, spoiler, I'll give my ending. Stephen King has a quote, I write so that I can think. Meaning
Mm,
that sometimes, that's what I'm like. I write it out, then I know
yeah.
what I'm thinking. But looking back, because I did finally bring it up and everybody was fine with it. And that was a requirement of work. But I think I would have given myself more grace when things were really tough, just to say, you know what, it's not going to work for me this morning. Rather than, because at the end of the day, the kids ended up where they needed. I ended up, but now when I look back, was it that important that I was there every week? Or maybe I'd say, you know what, this is great. Maybe the first Monday doesn't work for me. Maybe I should have either given myself a little bit more grace to miss a few, or find a way in between. And the other thing I learned from it, and this kind of goes back to the Barbie, teaching the younger Barbies, is because you can't make everybody happy. If you bring up, oh, I've got to do something for my kids or school, and others don't seem to be understanding, you don't have to tell them what you're doing. And I would block my calendar. And if somebody said, oh, can we do a meeting Tuesday at 3? And I knew I had a pickup, I wouldn't say I've got to pick my kids up from school. I'd say I had a conflict. And you know what? The guys who had tea times would say, I've got a conflict. And if they did, but if it ended up that was the only time that worked for everybody, I could change mine around. But 90% of the time, if I just said I had a conflict, but if I said it had something to do with my kids, I was expected to change that around. So
Right.
don't you sometimes less is more, and stand your ground. But if it isn't accepted, you don't have to defend yourself.
I think that's key, not feeling like you have to justify and defend your,
Justify.
yeah, yeah. I have an early morning appointment once a week, a call, same type of scenario. And it's only an hour once a week. So it's not that big of a deal. And it used to be that I would get up and get my cup of coffee and log in. And it wasn't, and it's not a virtual, like I don't have to be ready for it. It's just a phone call. And so there's no visual, like I don't have to, yeah, I don't have to, I can be in my pajamas and it doesn't matter. Um, and what I was doing, because I was getting paid for this, so I started even doing this call on vacation. So
Okay.
I'd go on vacation and I'd be like, well, it's easy enough just to take my computer. Everybody will still be asleep and I'll do this. So for a while I did that. And then I was like, this is crazy. Why am I not having any boundaries around my time? And my last trip that I took in September with Trevor, I was like, I'm not doing this meeting. I'm traveling, I'm driving. I don't know what my schedule is going to be. And I am just going to tell them I am unavailable. And it was fine. It was completely accepted and it wasn't a big deal. And I didn't say, I'm driving across the country with my son. I just said, I'm not available next week. And, and it was fine. Now I am going to tell you all of that pressure to be on that call every week is me. There was
Typically with me too.
exactly, there was no external, like, you have to be there. It was me putting that pressure on myself.
Mm-hmm. Which we do all the time, which gets back to the rant, you're not supposed to complain. You're supposed to say, how much of this pressure are we putting on ourselves?
Yes.
Because we're not perfect, right? And it's giving ourselves grace too. And then always trying to be a better version of ourselves. If something goes wrong because things didn't pull together, we didn't show gratitude, we didn't follow through on something in a timeline that was an expectation, all we can do is learn from it and try to do better. But we're never going to be perfect.
Right. And I think women, it's funny. I think we are harder on ourselves and we do a lot of stuff undercover. Like we do a lot of things that we don't tell people about. And I was just thinking when I got home last night, my dear husband, he'd been here all weekend and he was telling me his recap of the weekend. And then he started telling me all the chores he did over that, and I was just kind of like, why are you telling me that you vacuumed? Like, I don't care, but it was kind of funny because I think he was like sharing it with me kind of as a pat on the back of,
Right.
I got all this stuff done. And I'm like, that just is part of living, and you don't, I, I don't expect a pat on the back every time I vacuum. I'm just doing it because it needs to be done.
So funny, back to how we just do things below radar and they get done. There's many a stories that my boys will tell about how things just get done, right? The the laundry, how they're playing basketball and they throw their sweatshirt to the side. And by the time they were done playing basketball, it'd be laundered, folded, and waiting for them. Anyway, that's a joke. But I would tell you, there's a lot of things that I kick myself because sometimes it's good for people to see what we're doing. Again, you don't have to say, here's a list of everything I've done, but sometimes we can make things too easy. And the example I'll give is taxes. So now that my sons are young adults, 30, 27, and 23, and especially the older two, they'll be talking to people their age, friends, coworkers, that will be consternating over, I got to get my taxes done. I got to pull my taxes together. Oh, I got to, it costs money. It takes effort. And Ben, my middle son, said to me, I was playing games with Zach, and it's like, oh, everybody's talking about getting their taxes done. They said, all we know is we get a text from mom. Have you gotten your W-2s? Before we know it, all of a sudden we have a refund in our checking account. We had no idea, like, it took work to get taxes done because it magically just got done. But listening to their friends, and they're like, oh, this is like a thing. Our mom just does this, and it's magically done. It's good they heard it from their friends, but back to that perspective, I'm not going to sit there and say, I spent my Sunday and it took me 3 long hours. That's just not how I'm programmed. And I think most women aren't programmed that way.
Right. They
But
just
it's
do
good for them to know because, hey, if I got hit by a car, they need to know they got to get their taxes done. It doesn't magically happen because your mother sent a text and said, just send me your W-2. I got to, and maybe ask a couple questions. Has your bank account changed? Literally, it's an inconvenience for them to answer a few texts.
That is a great story that just magically happens.
All of a sudden we have a refund because, I want to get it done early. So we're ahead of the game here. But we got to think about that as women because a lot of times we just get things done. And your Tom example, I'll bring up to Garrett something like, I'm sitting here thinking because I'm like, which example would be best? Because I bring this up a lot in general, where there'll be a chore, something that I'll say, hey, can you walk Zeke? And today, and I typically always walk the dog. And I'll make it work. Again, Garrett's great, but part of it is he doesn't realize all the other things until I leave town. And all of a sudden, all those things, getting the mail, making sure things are, the cleaning, the chore, all those things that go with the dog. It's like, man, you do a lot of stuff. And it doesn't mean he doesn't do things, but until
Exactly.
they experience it, they wouldn't know. But now I use that in my arsenal of saying, do you want me to name the 10 things I did yesterday? And then it's like, hey, I got the dog. I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's funny because when I was getting ready to leave, I knew the house needed to be vacuumed. Our apartment's very small, but we do have a dog, and every once in a while I have to vacuum.
Right.
And I remember thinking before I left, I'm like, should I vacuum really quick? And then I was like, no. I was like, Tom has all weekend to vacuum. I'm leaving because I was leaving at like 9:30 or 8:30 in the morning, and I had some little bit of time. I'm like, I am not going to pull the vacuum out and vacuum
We are
just so
all
that
doing it.
it's done. I know exactly. It's all good. It'll get done if it needs to be done. And I was like, I'll do it when I get home if I need to. But it is funny. I encourage everybody to see the Barbie movie because it's not just a kid's Barbie movie. I'll say that.
And I need to watch it again. But I don't think, is it out streaming yet or no?
It is. It is. Uh, yes, I saw it somewhere.
Okay.
It is. Um, yeah, it's good. So finding inspiration, getting out of the box, staying out of the box,
And
and
accepting it.
accepting it, being authentic and harnessing that courage, which is
To not be perfect, to be perfectly imperfect.
perfectly imperfect. I always love this. I love when we talk about stuff like this and we identify how we can be more authentic. It's always a good thing.
It's real.
It's real. All right. Well, thanks, Sandy.
All right, Amy, have a great week. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.